welcome to the Ascended Life podcast. I am Dar-El.
And I am Kesley. So excited to be back with you guys. It's been a minute. It's not our first go around with the podcast, but we felt called to reinvent ourselves, if you will.
Yeah. Well, so the last podcast that we were on, or that we had, it was called KT and the DM. DM was before I changed my name to Dar-El. It's my birth name was Darren McCleary. So that whole DM thing just didn't work anymore with the KT, you know?
Well, and our last podcast was really focused on relationships.
Yeah, it really was.
And which we will be covering in this podcast as well.
Okay.
But we decided we wanted to broaden out to everything that we see as the vision for the Ascended Life.
Yeah, the Ascended Life is more of a way of life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we've done things like public speaking. Now we have a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing all kind of different things, wellness and tons of different things. So it's just like to box ourselves into relationships was kind of
right.
It wasn't the way to go.
Right.
And and then we can really get into spirituality and a lot of stuff like that as well. So
yes. So that is our goal with this. This is more still the consciousness piece because KT and the DM was conscious relationships, but this is consciousness, spirituality, travel. We're actually coming to you from Cartagena, Colombia, where we've spent the last over 7 months now.
Yeah, we've been here for a while. So that's what we're looking forward to showing y'all. I mean, in most podcasts, and that's how we did the album was for a set. We just figured we got a lot to say and we got a lot of consciousness to share. So we're just going to get some chairs and just go to different scenes and different places. So we're looking forward to bringing y'all different beautiful sets around Colombia every week, just so y'all can see what it's like here. Just different things,
Yeah, and just sharing authentically. Like we didn't really rehearse or plan really what we were planning to talk about today. So this is us off the cuff.
Do you think people rehearse for podcasts?
Not rehearse. The better word would have been like plan.
I was gonna say, man, like after doing that stint on reality TV, I didn't think that people rehearse for reality TV.
Not so much rehearse, but
they do. Just
we're just rolling with it. Yeah.
On reality TV, they trust me. They do.
Yeah. So here we are.
Here we are. All right. Well, I think the first thing that most folks are going to want to know is I've got a lot of questions about, hey, what made y'all pick Colombia, or why are y'all in Colombia?
And how did you do this? How did you make this happen?
So let's talk about what made us pick Colombia to start. What would you say?
Well, I think, first we had the vision that we wanted to spend the winter months of Atlanta out of the country. Mm-hmm. And you always tell the story that from one of our first meetings, one of our first dates, that I told you that, this can work, but I'm not going to be living in the U.S. full time. I want to travel.
Yeah, right.
So we had the vision. And then I remember we were just kind of looking at different places. I know Panama was kind of at the top of the list. Mm-hmm. And then we started talking to some of our other well-traveled friends, and we kept hearing Colombia. We think you guys would like Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
And when we shared that with our family, they were like, Colombia? And when we talked to people who had actually been here, they're like, it's amazing. The culture, there's so much to do. It's affordable. The weather's great. We're vegan and mainly eat a lot of fruit. So we can get pretty much any fruit we could have imagined and then some here. So those were some of the factors that led up to it. And I think we just kind of decided hey, let's try it for a month. So we spent our first month in Medellin, Colombia, which is more in the mountains, not coastal. It's more of a mountain area, more urban. And now we're here in Cartagena, which is on the coast. So very different aspects, very different parts of Colombia. But started in Medellin, loved Medellin. And then we heard people telling us, hey, you should go try Cartagena. And here we are. And we've been here for 6 months now.
Yeah, 6-7 months. We've been here since February.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell the time here because it's almost like they don't have seasons like what we have in the United States. It's like you have the dry season and the wet season. But this wet season is just it barely rains. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It may have rained 10 times since we've been here, or 12 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a few weeks where it rained a lot. And then now it's just kind of back to a little bit of today is actually a cloudier day compared to most days. It's usually full sun.
Slightly cloudier.
Yeah.
So going back to the why. So I remember when we were deciding where we were going to go and how we were going to do it, we had some talks with some different people. And, some of the feedback we got was negative, but it was you can't really listen. And this is advice that I would give. Mm-hmm. If somebody hasn't been to a place, you can't listen to them at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I've given my son advice on things like, hey, if a person isn't living the kind of life that you want to live, don't necessarily take their guidance on how to live life. I would get me a mentor that's kind of doing the things that I want to do. So that's number one.
Yeah.
But number two, my best friend, DeAndre, he has spent a lot of time down here. So we have been back and forth because initially we were talking about Panama and maybe Tulum or something like that. But then finally, when we decided to do Colombia, it was, I think the thing was DeAndre and then Sharon and James.
And James, yeah.
I think they had spent some time in Cali or somewhere maybe.
Well, they had several friends. I think they had been to Cartagena before. But they'd had friends who had been traveling Colombia and just felt, you know, people know us, right? They know our vibes. So they're like, we think you'd like this. And, you know, very trustworthy people. They know us very well. And they did not steer us wrong
at all.
And the other funny thing is that when we first came down here, we kind of planned on like a month in Colombia. Like you said, we were planning to do Tulum, maybe like 3 different places over the course of 3 months.
Yeah.
Well, 7 months later, we're still in Colombia. So we just kind of got sucked in a little bit in a good way. In a good way, yeah.
We did say that we were gonna we were gonna do like Panama for a month, and then we were gonna do maybe Tulum, maybe Jamaica. I do remember that.
Yeah, but what I would say to people who are thinking about this sort of nomadic lifestyle, the benefit of staying in one country for an extended period of time is that I don't think we would have gotten the cultural experiences, some of the spiritual lessons, like things have continued to unfold and go deeper and deeper as we've been here. And I don't know if we would have just spent 1 month, if we would have gotten the deep spiritual experience that we've had as we've stayed longer and longer.
Sí, también.
Yes.
También ahorita mi entiendo y hablo español ahorita. So, I mean, from being here so long, I can now speak and understand Spanish.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that's a plus. But yeah, I get it. Yeah, I would say that you culturally, you get to understand a culture on another. And it's kind of, this whole trip has had me rethink. It's just changed so much for me. It's like the whole idea of vacation, right?
Yeah.
Like, all right, to me now that we've been here for months, a vacation is like, say you want to go swimming, right? You want to get in a pool and go swimming, right? A vacation is like taking your toes and dipping your toes in a pool and then saying that you swim.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's
so
like,
true.
you get a touch of some things in 5 days, but it's like in 5 days or even a week, what if things go bad? Then that your whole scenario is tainted in that scenario. And another thing that I've noticed is being here, we've met folks from Austria, Italy, Africa, Jamaica, like all over the world. And another thing I've noticed is that the United States, we vacation the least. When these people go on holidays, they're just gone for months, for weeks at a time. The United States, we're doing our best to get 3 or 4 days.
Yes.
So it's just really opened my mind. I mean, you read these things, but when you meet people and you hang out with people that are living this, and you're like, you know, man, we doing something different. We doing something wrong.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes, we are. So I think that brings us to another like great question a lot of people asked us.
Yeah.
Okay, how did you decide? But like, how did we actually do this?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, you want me to go first, I guess?
Sure. Yeah.
I would say it's a lot cheaper than you would think. So for example, in Atlanta, you know what I mean? If you're paying rent, if you got a decent place, well, okay, we like to live in the city. So we're living, my loft is downtown and her place is, it was in Reynoldsville, or I can't remember the part of the town. Reynoldstown. So we're paying like, I don't know, like in total for both places, like $5,000 a month. If you come to these countries, Cartagena is the most expensive city apparently in the whole of South America, right? At least that's
definitely
what we've been
Colombia,
told.
yeah.
In Colombia for sure. So you can get something, I'm talking for like $1,500, and this is completely furnished.
On the beach, y'all, literally. The beach is right over there. On the beach.
$1,500 a month, and that's everything. So the how is I think more of a mental thing. Like, especially since so many people are working remote.
Yeah.
The how is not the issue. It's more of the mindset of understanding that you can, right? Because financially, you save a lot more money. Like, think about it. Like, for example, so if your rent's $1,500, food, number one, everything's more or less organic. You got to go out of your way to find organic stuff, right? That's number one. But then number two, the food is probably like a quarter or a fifth of the cost.
Definitely, at least a quarter of the cost.
A quarter of the cost. So your grocery bills go down, your restaurant bills go down, if you're going to drink, your drinking bills go down. All of that stuff goes down.
Childcare, right? We have a nanny here. I mean,
I don't think we're going to put those prices out there on the podcast, but it's drastically cheaper. We have a full-time, pretty much live-in nanny now who's going to be with us just indefinitely. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then you're talking about the food, right? Like in the US, you might be able to find a farmer's market a couple days a week. Like you can find farmers markets, but here there's a specific street you can go to, and it's literally a whole street full of literally right off the truck, right from the farm, no stickers, no bags, no processing, no nothing, no, GMO, all organic, like fresh, basically picked that day that we can get at any time of day, any day of the week. So that's amazing. That's enough right there to keep us here.
That's here in the Cartagena, man.
Yeah.
You go to Medellin, oh my God.
Yes.
There's like these warehouses that are like this. It's got to be miles.
Yes.
And I know of
probably I don't know, maybe a square mile. I don't know. It's huge.
It's at least, think of like a super Walmart, like the giant Walmarts. Think of those.
Yeah.
And just full of like organic fruit.
Yeah.
And we don't hear, the funny thing is you don't even have to say organic. It's just fruit.
It's just fruit.
You know what I mean?
It's just food, right? It's just food. It's how they know food.
It's just, a thing. A quick story. I don't mean to get sidetracked, but we've been vegan for years. We've been raw vegan for a bit, going back and forth. But here, I mistakenly ate chicken. And as a person who has not eaten meat, they told me it was vegan. It was vegan chicken, but something was lost in translation. I ate chicken, not to say that you should come here and eat meat, but I ate chicken and I didn't even get sick at all. I didn't even know. I didn't even know. And it's like, it really begs sorry, we got airplanes going by. We're not far from the airport. But it begs the story of like, or the question of like, what's going on with the meat at home? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So the food in itself has been amazing. The fruit specifically, the fruits have been absolutely amazing.
Absolutely
Going
amazing.
back to the how, I agree with you on the mindset thing, because it really was a vision. I guess I've had this vision of being able to travel and be a nomad for several years, but I think we kind of had it together because you even started to transition out of personal training last year and the gym and all of that. And kind of having this vision of being able to be more flexible and remote and being able to travel. The other thing about this location, I didn't even think about this so much when we picked it. However, the time zone thing is a big deal, right? If you're still doing business in the US, like I work remotely and I have clients in the US. So it's like, for me, being on central time zone makes it way easier than if, we thought about Africa, we thought about like many different places like Asia, I think would be a great place to be as well. But you're working in a completely different time of day, like it'd be me working at night or something along those lines in order to be able to do business in the US. So that's another great
you're right, because most of our businesses I'm primarily day trading these days.
Yeah.
And there's some other ventures that I got going, investments and things, but like it does help to be in a very similar or close time zone. I can completely agree with that. 100%.
Yeah. So everything works out, right? And I think there have been so many amazing surprises that we've had in terms of like why we were brought here. But yeah, the spiritual lessons I think have been amazing as well.
Yeah, they have been. Very amazing. They have been.
So you had already mentioned like some of the learnings that you've had and like some of the ways that your eyes have been opened.
There was something I was thinking about the how though. I was really going to dive into it. It just kind of, when those thoughts go in and then they just go.
Yeah.
I guess it ain't meant to be.
Especially on full moon days, right? We've noticed that sometimes full moons, you guys probably have noticed this too, can change your communication or the way you process things.
Yeah. For sure. But what was
definitely your emotions?
What was your question again? I'm sorry.
Well, you were saying earlier, you kind of alluded to the fact that, you see things differently or it's opened up your mind.
Well, okay. Well, I'm just going to get down to it. The nitty gritty is like, so my primary focus here is, I guess the day trading has nothing to do with here because I'm doing it here, but it's based in the markets. But we're doing a lot of work with our nonprofit, the Ascended Life Foundation, along with public speaking. But what I found is in nonprofit work, I came and open heart, wanted to help folks and be that way. What I found is the wisest thing to do is you have to stay in the same mindset that you're in regardless, right? Like, because I came here just trying to help different types of people and so forth and so on. And there was a huge cultural difference. Yeah. Right? A huge cultural difference. And there was a mindset that I found. I'm not saying, anything. There's no place where I would say all of any place is any one way, right?
Right.
But we've encountered a lot of people that, you talk about like mindsets, right? And different things like this. Well, number one, I realized after being here for so long, we don't have poverty in the United States. It does not exist. when you go and you compare, there's no place in Detroit. And I'm from Detroit. There's no place in Long Beach or in Compton or in New Orleans that you can go to that compares to like areas that literally look like somebody dropped a bomb on it. Like, and then people are living there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when people don't have plumbing or electricity, or they're in tin houses with like little wooden shacks where that, you know, they're just wanting tiles. One of our drives that we got coming up next week for a nonprofit is just to give tiles out to a community where literally people just don't have proper roofing, so they're wet all the time. You know, it's a different level, right? But the point that I wanted to get to is a poverty mindset. I've never seen it to the degree that I've seen it here. It's like, and I get it, right? Like if you're born in a place where it's wet all the time, and you know you don't have electricity, and you know it literally looked like a bomb was dropped off, you're in the negative side of the root chakra. You're in a survival place. Like we've met plenty of people that were just, they're not thinking beyond day to day.
Day to day, yeah, literally. Like, you know, we've heard of people like paying rent by the day or buying groceries by the day. It's like you make what you need to for the day, and then that needs to get you by for that day, and then the next day you start fresh again. I've never seen or heard of that before. I'm sure it happens in other places in the world as well. But
well, I've seen things like in in Detroit, where like I have seen the day-to-day survival. But they have programs like, for example, a man or a woman, at least in Michigan, I can't speak to the whole United States, can get something. Well, they got it in Georgia too, but you can get a bridge card, which is basically food stamps. That's virtually, to my understanding, from what I've been told, it's non-existent here. You know, there's no such thing as food, even though the food is so it's like certain levels of government care. And I don't want to call it government care, because don't get me started on the US, but certain levels of that kind of stuff, it's just not really here, at least that we've seen.
At least that we've seen or heard about from people that we've talked to and asked about it. So
what's your experience? So what would you say?
Wow, so much, like you said, so many things. You know, a lot of people, when you pick any location, right, outside the US, like you said, you know, Colombia. A lot of people have this idea of Colombia back in the 90s, right, where there was a lot of things going on here. We won't get into detail on that, but and people wonder, like, is it safe there? You know, is it safe there? I think that's one of the big learnings is like you said earlier, you have to go somewhere to be able to really experience it for yourself before you have judgments on it. So we came in with an open mind, right? And you're going to meet all kinds of people no matter where you go. And so one of the things I think we've both learned here more than ever is like trust your gut, right? And when people show you who they are, they're going to show you who you are, and you can make assessments on that. Don't prejudge, don't assume, don't, you know, think that someone is a certain way the first time you meet them, or come off guarded. But when people show you who they are, that is data that you can use to make decisions from that point forward. So I think we've learned a lot about like taking that data, taking experiences with people, and making decisions from that place. Not prejudging, but trusting your intuition, but also trusting what you see. So I think that's one thing. The other spiritual lesson that I've experienced here, and it's not even probably Colombia so much, but we've had certain challenges we've come up against with our nonprofit, right? We've had certain challenges we actually had to travel back to the US in April for our very first speaking event that we did at a large conference. It was being held in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And so we had to travel, obviously, Cartagena to Atlanta to Denver, and then drive out to Colorado Springs. And we brought our 1.5-year-old daughter with us.
Goodness.
This is an experience, y'all. I mean, really, to get from Colombia to home is not a big deal, but to get all the way to Colorado Springs with a 1.5-year-old was a bit of an excursion, was a bit of an experience. So we actually got delayed. We got held up in customs on our way back in Atlanta. We had to spend the night in Atlanta, so we had to book out the next day. We had an exhausted daughter. We spent the night in Atlanta so she got to see her brother and her animals, so she didn't want to sleep. So we get on the plane, we finally get to Colorado Springs. Our rental car is messed up, our Airbnb is messed up. I'm telling you, like, everything that could have gone wrong, it felt like it all went wrong. Plus, she cried on the flight the entire way from Atlanta to Denver. Like, how many hours was that? Like 3 hours, basically.
Yeah, 3.5.
I'm telling you, y'all, when we got off the plane, we were famous.
Yeah.
In a not so good way, but kind of in a good way, because everybody was like, wow, you guys were so patient. Good job. Like, we've been there, you know, pat on the back. We feel you. Like, every parent on the plane had empathy for us because most parents have been in this position. But anyway, what we learned from this, from some of the challenges we've had with some of the new experiences and the new opportunities that have come our way, is that, you know, I think especially in spirituality, a lot of times we talk about like, oh, if it's meant to be, it's going to just flow. It's going to be easy.
Yeah.
And that is the case, right? We do get momentum when things are aligned. But like one of our mentors for our nonprofit told us, the closer you get to your true purpose, the more that resistance is going to show up.
Yeah.
And we found that to be true. And it's not meant to stop us, but it's meant to, I think, prepare us. You know, prepare us to like get us ready for that next level, right? And so we experienced that. The public speaking event, I mean, it would have been easy enough just to be like, all right, I know we signed a contract, but this is just too much. Like this, we can't do this, right? Everything was going wrong. Like we can't do this, but we pushed through, and literally that was one of the most purposeful, magical, amazing experiences of my life. And I know you've expressed that for you as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that has been a huge lesson of even though I'm all for the alignment and feeling that alignment and knowing that, yes, this feels like it's on purpose, this feels right. It doesn't mean that just because it's aligned and on purpose that you're not going to come up against resistance.
But let me ask you, okay, because we both have been students of Kabbalah.
Yes.
Kabbalah was big on teaching resistance, right? And how when you're getting closer to your goal, you're going to get more resistance, right? Mm-hmm. So we had that Kabbalistic teaching.
Yes.
We've had the things that we've seen, right? Another Kabbalistic teaching it was by David Guillaume that I really resonated with was, he said something along the lines, I'm going to paraphrase. He said that nobody can ever technically really steal from you. Because, for example, say, for example, your consciousness is here. You have $1 million consciousness. And your consciousness has manifested the $1 million, right? Somebody takes that $1 million from you. What he taught was that as long as your consciousness remains there, then the $1 million is going to come right back to you.
Right.
But if your consciousness drops to the victimhood and the, oh my God, I was robbed and so forth and so on, then it's going to go away, right? So I've kind of blended that along with the consciousness of resistance. It's kind of like what I've noticed is when you're resisting, because I look at that whole trip to Colorado Springs, right? And looking back on it, now that you say it that way, it seemed like that, but in the moment, it just seemed like no problem. It's like, oh, the rental's not working. No big deal.
Yeah, you're right.
The Airbnb's not working. No big deal. Oh, our daughter just cried for 3.5 hours, and I'm walking up and down the aisle. You weren't getting the dirty looks that I was getting as a man, but I was getting some dirty looks. I was like, hey, man, I don't want to have to throw down on this airplane, you know what I mean? Because these guys are giving me these dirty looks. But anyway, so my question is, right, now that we saw firsthand that, because to me, right, if you want my opinion of what happened in that moment, our consciousness just didn't drop to the situation.
That's an important.
We stayed here and maintained it, and we didn't go there, right? It's kind of like Tone. We found a guy. I've been really big researching. I'm a student of, anybody that knows me will tell you this, but I'm a student of all ancient religions. So I've studied Judaism, Kabbalah, Hinduism, Buddhism. The Essenes are who I resonate with the most, Christianity, Islam. But I look for commonalities amongst them, right? Now, I've really got into watching folks that have had these near-death experiences. It started with a gentleman by the name of Jeff Cleckley. Jeff Cleckley really, man, that guy changed my life. You know, shout out Jeff if you're watching this, man. Shout you out, brother. But he completely changed my life. But his story was he more or less he passed away from mistakenly taking too many pain pills on his bathroom floor, and he went to the other side, right? And he came back with some extremely valuable information, right? And most if not all of that information corresponded with the deeper truths that I learned from a lot of these ancient wisdoms that I had been studying. Not the dogmatic pieces of, hey, take Jesus as your savior, you're going to hell, or, you know, Islam is the only way. Like, I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about the deeper truths that unconditional love is everything, right? Your consciousness and these deeper teachings, right? So Jeff is the first step that opened up my mind. And then after Jeff, I found Tone, and then we found Yandia. Shout out Yandia. She's your teacher now.
She is. She's my mentor. I feel very blessed.
Actually, your mentor. But let me bring this all back to the question. So through learning from these people, I found that they say that the only thing, this is the one thing that all the people that have crossed over have come back and they said, listen, the only thing that matters is unconditional love. That's all we are. That's all we are is unconditional love, and everything else is conditions and basically nonsense that we're creating, right?
Yes.
So with all that being said, and with understanding that resistance is what it is, how do you're going to be like, oh, you put me on a hot seat after the podcast because it's a deep question, but understanding all of that we both understand now, how do you work through synchronicities and flow as opposed to just holding on to a consciousness and kind of moving through resistance, right? Like, what do you think there? Good question, right?
Wow, that is a good question.
Oh God, that's a good one.
How do I repeat that one more time? How do I work through?
So through all of that, right? So understanding what we understand now about like consciousness and everything being unconditional love, and basically whatever Jeff's main thing was, you can have anything in this world as long as you just do not give into doubt and you don't question, right? That's what he learned on the other side, right? And it's kind of like what David Guillaume said, the reality has to come. So I didn't finish what he said. He basically was saying that I think I did, but as long as you maintain the consciousness, the reality has to mirror your consciousness, right?
Right.
So with all that being said, I know you were big on, and as was I, was go with the flow and believing in flow state and things like that, right? And if you get too much resistance, maybe it just isn't for you. Well, how now, knowing all of these things, how do you recognize, which is which? Are they both, or how do you go with?
I think it's all necessary. It's all... The thing that came to me the other day in a meditation was, it doesn't matter if we think we're off our path or we're on our path. It's all necessary. It's all part of the journey, right? So I think our role, right, as evolving, ascending beings, is to be in that place of not external flow, but internal flow. To your point, right? Everything, no matter what happens, everything is happening for me. I'm going to maintain this state of unconditional love. One of the things that Gandia has me working on right now is oneness, right? We were talking about it this morning, like being able to access and like feel and touch and be in that God state and seeing God in other people, right? That's our role. So no matter what happens, and I used to sometimes think that maybe we manifested some of these negative experiences or a lot of the negative experiences. I don't necessarily think that's the case all the time. I think sometimes things show up as part of that, as part of what's necessary to help us evolve to the next level, right? Like some of the things I've been working on internally, like I mentioned, oneness, unconditional love, I'm seeing external experiences show up that maybe it's not that I manifested them, but maybe I did, but maybe I manifested them in a way that is actually meant to help me evolve, to take me to that next level. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I see it, is like it all works together in perfect harmony as part of this journey that we're on as souls to bring us closer to who and what we are meant to be.
I see what you're saying. So it sounds to me like you're almost saying it doesn't matter what you do, it's taking you on the path.
Yes, exactly. It's all part of the path.
Well, because my question, all right, let me tell you what I struggled with. So there was a time, my dad can attest to this. He and I went through this together. I was on my path of being a Detroit firefighter, right? And it was like, I got hired on, and then all of these things just kept happening, right? And in my heart, I was kind of like, you know what? In my life, these things had never happened like this, and it's maybe this isn't for me. And I mean, we had done everything, he and I together, to get me hired into this position. And you know, he just hit me up, and he was like, or we were talking. This is years, man. I don't even remember how long ago this was. Before I even moved to Ohio, so at least 11, 12 years ago. And he was like, man, maybe this just isn't the way, you know, like most times when things are meant to happen, they just kind of flow.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, it's like, okay, but had my consciousness been there, and had I really but then again, the city of Detroit at that point went through a bankruptcy, and they had cut the pay drastically too. There's no way I was going to do it. But so I guess what I'm really saying is, do you think that whatever you want, you can have as long as you just stay and you keep going past the resistance? Or is some of the resistance there literally to tell you this isn't, like, how do you determine what's for you?
So
as opposed to,
I love the example that you just gave, because I don't necessarily think that there's anything that we like aren't supposed to have or can't have, but we have choice points, right? Like that experience with you in the firefighting, you had a choice point. You were like, well, the universe was like, do you really, really want this? Because if you really, really want it, we can push through. But maybe there's a path. So it wasn't telling you no, but it was like kind of gently nudging you. Maybe there's another path that might bring you in a direction that actually, based on what your true intentions are, is going to be more aligned for you in the long run. Yeah. So it's like, I don't think the door is ever shut. There's ever, no, absolutely not. But But I do think the universe tries to help and guide us based on what our intentions are. So like for you, it wasn't about being a firefighter. There was some deeper desire that you had or reason you wanted to be a firefighter.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe you got that in another way, and the universe was actually helping you get there in a way that was better for you.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess because when we kind of determine the flow state and what's meant for us is what's meant for us, I guess it's maybe in a way, now that I'm talking about this out loud, when we give into that, it's kind of like predeterminism.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think it is that. I don't think it is that.
You don't think the flow state is?
No, I don't think that things are like predetermined, like it has to be this one way.
But what I'm saying is, but when we say that because anybody that goes with the flow is, hey, how many times have you heard what's meant to be is what's meant to be?
Yeah.
Or what's meant for me is what's meant for me. But now that I'm really sitting back and in this conversation, thinking about it, I think whatever you want is what's meant for you.
Whatever you want.
I don't know. There's a lizard over there, so don't freak out if he runs over here.
I do think there are certain things, certain experiences that our soul did sign up to have, but I don't think the way that we have them is set in stone. Okay. Right? It's just like sort of like, I'll put it even in the lens of astrology. So
what do you mean? Like if you're born into a certain house?
Right? Like okay, so I like to think about it in astrology. Like when I look at someone's birth chart, right? And we've looked at yours extensively and mine extensively, and some of you probably out there too, is like, there's certain experiences by me saying I wanted to be an Aquarius sun, and you saying I wanted to be a Capricorn sun, or me saying I want to have a Cancer North node and a Capricorn South node, or have a whatever, right? Whatever's in your chart, a Pisces moon in your example. There's certain experiences my soul wanted to have. There's certain lessons my soul wanted to learn. But how those happen, there's a lot of free will involved. There's a lot of choice involved. Yeah. But you're not going to really escape or at least evolve this life unless you go through the lessons and the experiences. So those are more like the
passive experiences, huh? Like it's like, so if you're born
the fate. I think there's some fate involved.
I chose to be a man, tall guy.
Yes.
You chose to be a woman. So you're talking about like how in these bodies that we chose, like our cultures, our ethnicities and things, like how those experiences are the passive experience. But even within those, right? Even within those, I feel like there's a lot that, I used to grow up, I don't know what sense that made. As a child, I grew up and I remember, man, this lady, oh my goodness. But I would hear people, I won't say any names, but teachers, but I would hear people, it was a big thing in the 90s that people would tell us as young, I don't identify as this term anymore. People just call you black man and this and the third. It's like we have an identity as a people. I ain't gonna get in that on this podcast. But anyway, so, but growing up as what's called a young black man, people would literally tell us, and I'm talking like we're 7 and 8, that man, you already got 2 strikes against you. You already got 2 strikes against you. They're just waiting for it. And I get that. And this was a lot of non-black people. I don't think I heard this from as many black people as I did from non-black, but I heard this from like teachers growing up, right? And it's kind of like, you got to be perfect and but it's like, I get that people in their minds were attempting to help or protect or prevent things from happening. But I grew up and all of the guys that I know that adopted that mindset, and they kind of walk around with like a chip on their shoulder, it's kind of like you manifest and you bring a lot of that. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, right? That'd be foolish, right? Or I'm not saying that prejudice doesn't exist, right? But I'm saying that why would you teach somebody to go out and look for it? Why would you teach somebody to bring, because I am all about the mindset of understanding that what we think and what we believe is what we bring to ourselves, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's like, I take it literally when the Bible says, know ye that ye are gods. Like I am a God. That's how I see myself, right? So as a God, and understanding that in this reality, what I think about is what's gonna be brought to me. I don't see why I would sit back and think about those things. But with that being said, when you teach that to a child from a young age, I'm not saying that people manifest racism on themselves, but I'm saying that I've seen everybody I know that has adopted that lifestyle has had a much harder walk than the people that have not. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that you don't acknowledge reality, but it's just like anything else. We can choose to, whatever you focus on expands.
Yeah, exactly.
And multiplies. It's as simple as that, right? So I just say all that to say that when it comes to these passive experiences that we have kind of chosen to kind of bring things into this world or to have these experiences, I guess where do you think, like where does free will meet the choices that were pre-made or that you pre-made before you got here, if that's where you're going with that spiritually.
Where does free will meet that?
Right, exactly. So where does the pavement, where does the rubber hit the road?
Yeah,
I think
there's, I think, like I said, I think there's certain lessons, right? Like let's just take you as an example as a Capricorn sun. Capricorns are learning about leadership. They're learning about success and what that means. They're learning about like impact, legacy, right? Those are a lot of the like sort of basic lessons we can go a lot deeper into, but that a Capricorn would be learning, right? So you can learn that based on the free will that you have. You can learn that in a variety of different ways, right? Like me being an Aquarius, right? Aquarians are here to learn about self-expression. They're here to learn about contribution, making a difference in the world. There's many different ways based on my choice that I can learn those lessons. But if I want to evolve, if I want to feel fulfilled as a soul, I'm going to come up against lessons and things in my reality where I'm going to have to learn some of those lessons.
I see what you're saying.
That's how I see it.
Well, I guess what my actual question was, how much of the reality do you think is the predetermined experiences that you kind of picked versus how much is actually the free will that you're choosing
Dang,
to act
if I knew
on?
the answer to that, I think I'd be, I'd be an enlightened being. I don't know.
I'm just asking what you think.
I don't know. What do you think? I would say if you just want me to guess a number.
I'm just saying, what do you think based on?
I would
you seem like
say
you've given us a lot more thought than I have.
I would just say if I were to throw out a number, like this is just for fun, right? This is for fun. I would say 10 to 20%, maybe 10% is predetermined and 90% is
Free will.
Free will. Maybe even 5.95.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Somewhere between the 10 and I would agree with that.
I was like 50. I was like, no. I kept going down, and I was like, no, I think it's very low. It's probably about 5% that's actually predetermined.
I would agree with that. Hopefully these planes aren't too loud. These mics are supposed to be noise canceling, so.
Yeah, so our daughter, every time a plane flies by, says ciao. She is
the girl speaks Spanish.
Yes, and bilingual. And
Spanish,
maybe
English, Italy, Italian, Italian. She's got some Italian friends and apparently Mandarin.
We're pretty sure that this woman has brought in several languages from past lives.
I don't know how she's doing it, but yeah,
we can talk about past lives. This is a consciousness podcast.
Yeah, she's a different kind of person. All right, well, look, the thing, and sorry we're coughing. We got a issue with our AC unit in the place. It's got some kind of.
They're coming to clean it on Tuesday.
Yeah, they got to clean it. Everybody in the building, they were doing some work here, and then they so it's all good.
Yes.
But anyway, so I think we should close on this. We talked about how we got here. Mm-hmm. All right, we talked about why we did it. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about, I think it would be a good close to talk about both of our opinions on how this has changed and molded and helped our relationship grow.
Oh, wow. You want me to start?
I guess I should start. You're thinking a lot more. So for me as a man, all right, number one, I'm just going to speak the truth. Being here in Colombia, all right, like when you get down here, it's a whole different, it's almost like being in the United States back in the 1960s. And I'm not saying that women can't support themselves, but women are taught to be, you see the passport bros and these guys talk about things like, oh man, you go down there and these women know how to take care of men and all this other stuff. And do not get me wrong, that is very much true. But it's almost like a catch-22. The women here have been so taught to be dependent on a man that if that support falls out, they have another industry here that women can fall into, and a lot do, prostitution. And Kes struggled with seeing this, with this amount of prostitution around. She struggled with it, but it's almost heartbreaking to see, like, it's almost like a no opportunity thing. So I would say that for me being here, right, like I've always, shout out to my mom if she's watching. My mom was a strong woman. My mom was never, now listen, most people think when you say strong is I don't need no man. And my mom was never, I've never heard her say that a day in my life. She was married to my father until I was in my, 27 or something like that. And they just didn't work out for whatever reason. But with that being said, my mom would have preferred to have stayed married. You know what I mean? So my mom definitely would never say that she didn't need a man, but I would consider my mother, my aunt, my grandmother, all the matriarchs of my family, strong women, right? And these were the first women that loved me. And they were the women that taught me love. And my mother taught me that all I had to do was wake up in the morning and she loved me. That's it. I didn't have to earn her love. I didn't have to do anything. And it was truly unconditional. So me and my brothers and being loved like that from a woman and that being the first love, that's all you look for when you go out, right? So I've had homeboys explain to me that they've had problems with gold diggers and all that. Like I've never had those issues because we only are attracted to women that have some level of what we consider strength. And the tree of life, by the way, the Kabbalistic tree of life, is broken up into three. There's a center pillar, there's a male side and a female side. And just so you know, the female side is actually hope, which translates from Hebrew to English as strength. And the male side is actually love, which is, that's a whole nother podcast. But back to my mother, and, with us learning that and seeing that kind of love, that's all we look for, right? So to bring it all together, after seeing how dependent a lot of these women are on men, it has truly given me a special admiration for you and your strength and your tenacity and your ability to just be, and by independent, I don't mean like, financially independent or when I'm talking about independence, I'm talking about like mental, spiritual, emotional, right? Like it's really given me appreciation for you and your strength, if you will. Not to call the women here weak, I'm not saying that, but like there's definitely culturally a much larger dependence on the masculine side than we see at home. So that's what it's done for me. It's given me a much greater, I don't know if I've even told you that, except for on this podcast.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah, I haven't even told you. Thank God for the podcast. But yeah, it's truly, it's given me just a phenomenal appreciation for your strength. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. To kind of play off that.
Con mucho gusto.
Yeah, con mucho gusto. To kind of play off that, or you, like from that perspective, right? You take a family, right? You take a 1.5-year-old, and we had Dominic here, a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
And the two of us, and move out of the country for 7 months. You run into a lot of experiences that you've never had before, right? You're literally in a foreign country, having foreign experiences, running into situations, having to make decisions like, where do we live? What Airbnb do we go to? We had one Airbnb that we went to, and we're like, you kind of made the call. You're like, this just isn't a good fit for us. This isn't where we should spend the next month of our lives.
That was like 20-some amount.
Yeah.
We just had to walk away.
We just had to walk away from it because we're like, you really said it. You're like, I just don't see us feeling at home here for the next month. My point is, what I've seen is like you really stepping up, and you've always done this, but especially in a foreign country, you've really stepped up as the leader of this family and led us through so many situations where I'm like, I don't know what to do, babe. What do you think? And you've just called it, and you've made the decisions, and you've led us. And we've had an amazing experience. And we've had experiences even where our nanny has come over and she's felt safe in our home for whatever reason, right? So it's like, just that feeling of support. And the other thing is not necessarily because we've been in Colombia, but both of us have been working on unconditional love. And I feel like that commitment that we've made, and also, again, being in a foreign country where we don't have a lot of friends and family, it's us spending a lot of time together, has been really amazing. We've committed. We've been doing date nights pretty much every week since we've been here. I think that, like, for those of you who are watching this, who are in a committed relationship, maybe you have kids, I think that's been amazing. I think it's really, like, I feel it's really deepened our relationship for so many reasons, but I agree, like, it's helped me really see in you, it's reaffirmed for me in you, the leadership and the emotional and physical and just overall, like, safety and care that you have and wisdom that you have. Doesn't matter what country we're in, you show up as that.
Wow.
So those are a few of the things. I think it's been an amazing experience for our relationship, for our family, for our spirituality, for everything.
Well, thanks, babe.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Con mucho gusto.
Thank you so much. Well, I think that's it for our first podcast. I think this was a good first podcast for sure.
Yeah.
We look forward to getting back to our weekly schedule. We never even got on the weekly schedule. See, we had so many issues because we were running into babysitter issues.
Oh,
It was a lot to get that off the ground. We had mic issues, a sound guy,
But again, right? It wasn't that it wasn't meant
doable.
To be.
Yeah.
It's that it was meant to be realigned in a different time and in a different way. Because again, we started just with relationships, and now we've broadened out. We are now the ascended life. So it wasn't it was resistance meant to open us up to expanded possibilities.
Yeah, well, you know what? Check us out, theascendedlifegroup.com, for our public speaking and wellness and health and stuff like that. Also, if you're interested in getting involved in any kind of nonprofit work, check us out at theascendedlifefoundation.org. There's where we're doing the heavy work of the goal is here in Colombia to build a community to where we're able to we're going to have 10 homes where people can live for 2 years. This is completely free for them. It's going to be paid for by the foundation. We're going to have Americans coming in and teaching people different skills. So whether it be English, tech, infrastructure, you name it, the goal is to take a poverty mindset and get people to a position where they can literally work and make a living for themselves.
Yes.
So we've partnered with another large, very successful nonprofit here. We're going to be doing some work coming up in the next couple of weeks. So a lot of big things coming there.
Yes, and we'd love to start doing volunteer opportunities, some retreats in the future. So if you want to travel, expand your mind, expand your circle, and give back, stay tuned for more opportunities on that
Retreats
as well.
coming up for sure, because that's the other half of the compound we're going to be building is going to be a retreat center.
Experiences, rebirth experiences. Yes.
Inside joke. She knows why I rolled my eyes at that.
Yes.
She knows why I rolled
but
my
it
eyes.
was important to say that, right? Because we say retreat,
is.
but we have a vision that is very different from your typical retreat.
Yeah. So Kes, it's always been her vision to launch these centers and to have these centers. So we're going to be, what do you call it? The Ascended Life Rebirth?
The Ascended Life Rebirth Experience is going to be what will be coming in the future.
The Ascended Life Rebirth Experience. You heard it here first. We've actually just announced this, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Can't wait.
All right. So you got anything else you want to say?
No, thank you for watching. Hopefully everybody, or at least somebody, took something from this in terms of expanding your mind, maybe opening up your mind to travel, or maybe something from a spiritual perspective. Can't wait to do the next one.
Now, feel free to send us, you can send us different ideas of things you want to talk about, but for the first 3 to 4 weeks, the month, we've kind of already got a lot of these ideas picked out. So even if you shout us or send us some of these ideas, we won't really be going into them in depth for at least a month, I believe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we're going to be doing some amazing stuff here. Sky's the limit with this thing. We don't know where it's going to go. Yeah. You guys know where it's going to go? I don't know where it's going to go.
It's always better not to know, because we would limit ourselves if we knew exactly where it was going to go.
I like that. Yeah. I like that. All right, y'all.
All right.
Ascended Life, signing out. There's birds everywhere.
Peace and love. Thanks for watching.
Peace and love. We out here.